So just so that you're aware, the reason this evening has come about is I had a conversation with Chris a few months ago where I said we were chatting about kind of involved in church and stuff like that. One of the areas that I felt for a while that I'd like to put a bit of energy into, really more like a kind of coordination, facilitator kind of type role, is in the worship life of the church. I think worship is one of those things in the church that's so kind of obvious that you do it, that you just kind of easily get stuck in the rut, basically just do the same old thing, same old thing. And I think it's good every now and again to stop, which is something we're going to do tonight, over the next few weeks, and think about why we do what we do. Should we be doing what we do? What don't we do? We should be doing things like that in terms of worship. So occasionally some of you guys here are going to have to get kind of awkward next. There are a few things I'm going to bring up on the screen for us to think about. And the strap line for Linden, evening hours, you just missed getting served your hot drink. But if you like a hot drink, there are hot drinks available in the kitchen.
I'm good. Sort yourself out.
Yes, sort yourself out. It's a self-service situation from here on in. The strap line for Linden is worship God, which is what we do, is worship God, make disciples, communicate with Jesus. So a third of what we're about, according to our little strap line, is worship. So I think a good thing that we have to together this evening to think about, well, what is that? Why do we do it? And what should that look like going forward?
In 2 minutes down the road. Just got we'll get it's almost 30 minutes, so
That's it now.
you both say.
Do you know what? On Tuesday nights here, the number of times it's the young people who say to me, Ben, can you turn the music down? We want to talk. So I kind of put a few activities together tonight to hopefully facilitate that discussion of what is worship, what should it look like specifically in the context of Linden. And I want to give you an opportunity to just share about things you think work, don't work, things you'd like to get more involved in the future. So it's going to be a very open evening. There are apparently some people who are going to be watching what's going on online, so you can get down here to childcare and whatnot. So your comments, in principle, can be listened to by people outside the team, just so you be aware of that. And
discussion on the website.
Yeah. So what I thought would be good to do before we kind of dive into talking is just create a bit of space, just to be quiet and listen to see if before we start talking, God wants to say anything to us. I want to show a very short movie. It's a movie hopefully you've seen before that hopefully reminds us who we are as a church. It's a movie I love called We Are Linden. It's all this conversation to be about not just a kind of philosophical, abstract conversation about what is worship, but specifically in the context of who we are. That was a beautiful thing.
That's fitted.
Remember, the woman in her 60s in the floor. This is a sad situation. Making a spectacle. So I'm going to show a very short movie, and I want us to try something which possibly is a little ambitious, but I'd like us just to sit in silence for a couple of minutes. What I do when I try and spend some time in silence is a thing called centering prayer. Some of you have heard of it. Catholics love it. Where you pick a word, ideally a good, wholesome word, an encouraging word like Jesus or love or something like that. And you try and, over that time of silence, just focus on that word. Inevitably, your mind drifts away when things go silent. And you use that word to just draw your thoughts back to that one thing. It's usually Jesus is the word that I use. And we just use that little bit of time just to see if you want to say anything to us. And then, to end it, I'll ask Pastor Chris to just open in prayer. A more standard verbal prayer. I'll give you a little tap, but I feel like you can't cope with it yourself.
Standard verbal prayer. that was going back. That one is stuck. The other one is.
That was how many gold.
It's in a place.
Any false horses,
Okay, so we're watching the movie. At the end of the movie, so just be quiet. We'll try for 2 minutes and see how it goes. If I feel like people are finding it painful, that's all.
Thank you, Father, that you are as present to us as the air that we breathe, and that we recognize your presence in each other and in and amongst us as a community. Father, we ask as we reflect, as we talk, as we explore, as we dream tonight about worship and our responses to you, that you might help us to do so with a sense of insight and appreciation. Give us wisdom, grace, and humility. Amen.
So there was some piece of paper lying around at the start saying worship is, which hopefully has prompted you to have a little think about that. So would anybody like to, if you want to share what you've written, why you've written it, that'd be cool. If you want to pass them to somebody, if you don't want to read yours out, or pass it to somebody, someone else to read, do that. Really each want to share what they've got in terms of that question.
Let's move on.
Would it be easier if I got you to all put them on the middle and I just read them out? Yes, we do that. It's quicker. Throw them in here. Yeah, I tell you what we'll do. I'll nominate you to be the leader. We won't.
Do you think that, is that okay?
Yeah, I think you try and over. He's not going to let you forget that.
We just read straight out and no comment, you know?
Yeah, if there's anything interesting, we'll stop if you feel there's anything
Interesting. Boring.
Okay, we ready?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Different things at different times, generally an offering.
Old fashioned. Yeah, sure.
Worship is a response or expression to the passions in our lives. Worship is giving, having, being. Worship is being open and responsive to God. Worship is my center. It's connecting to a higher power. More than a song. Connecting with Christ through many mediums, including song and music. Being in His presence. Re-energizing. Supposed to be honest. Is honest. Everything related to praising and thanking our amazing God. Honoring God by the way we live our lives. Getting people to a place of closeness with God where they can be at one and give glory and worship. Glory stroke worship. Worship is loving God. A lifestyle choice. Living stroke lifestyle. That one here. Worship is a decision. Communicating with God. A response of the heart. An outward expression of how we feel about God. And worship is the whole of life.
We've got an online intimacy.
An online intimacy.
What worship is an online internet?
It is a guess. Okay, so there's some nice stuff in there. One of the ones that sprang out to me, and it's a word that's been on my mind today, I was thinking about this evening, was honesty. I think one of the things that worship has to be is honest, and it's one of the things that often it's not. I find in my experience. Anything else?
Yeah.
No, that resonate with anyone else? I looked up on the internet what some clever people have said about worship over the years. To add to things that we've been thinking about. The whole person, with all his senses, with both mind and body, needs to be involved in genuine worship. I like that one. Thought this was good as well. Without worship, we go about miserable. Having said that, lots of worship I've had to listen to over the years. So, double-edged sword. Big GK, can't get too wrong with what Graham Hendrick has to say generally. Worship has been misunderstood as something that arises from a feeling which comes upon you. But it is vital that we understand that it is rooted in a conscious act of the will to serve and obey the Lord Jesus Christ. I don't know who half these people are, but I love this one. Worship is an "it is well with my soul" experience. And that's something I thought, oh, that's great. There are moments when you think this is worship, and they're not often in church, where you think, it is well with my soul, and there's a worshipfulness in that. Richard Foster said, as worship begins in holy expectancy, it ends in holy obedience. Holy obedience saves worship from becoming an opiate, an escape from the pressing needs of modern life, which I thought was an interesting one, because I think there have been times in my life in the past, I think, where worship has almost been like an escape mechanism from reality. I'm not sure. And sometimes maybe it needs to be that, but sometimes it's dangerously handy. We must never rest until everything inside us worships God. Like lots of the comments did talk about the fact that it's got to be more than just music. It's a whole life encompassment. And C.S. Lewis says, it is in the process of being worshipped that God communicates his presence to men. So in light of all of this stuff, some of the things people have said about what worship actually is, and what we'd like it to be, do you think generally, in the worship life of Linden, we achieve any of these things?
Can I ask a question before that? All that doesn't mention spirit.
Jesus is about to.
Yeah, it's the whole thing of worship in spirit and in truth. And there's no, it's mind and body and it's feelings. And I think, hang on, it's a big bit missing.
Yeah. He's my next big quote.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. In terms of some of these things that we would like worship to be, is there anything particularly that I don't know, maybe you think we don't do well? Not particularly just Linden, but generally as church, there things we don't do well in terms of achieving these things and what worship should be. Okay, to vote with your clickers, that's what I'm going to do. Yeah, so I thought the same. I thought, well, do you know what, some of those things, I don't think even all of those quotes encompass what worship is. And my guess was, if we did a quick scroll of what worship is, I'd be left feeling a little bit lacking. So I went to Jesus, and of course the famous quote from Jesus is when he was talking to the woman at the well. And this is what Jesus said worship was. A time is coming, it has in fact come, when what you're called will not matter, and where you go to worship will not matter. It's who you are and the way you live count before God. Your worship must engage your spirit in the pursuit of truth. That's the kind of people the Father is looking out for, those who are simply and honestly themselves before him in their worship. God is sheer being itself, spirit. Those who worship him must do it out of their very being, their spirits, their true selves, in adoration. So, good point. Yeah. And what struck me here when I was kind of thinking about this earlier was that what Jesus said worship has to be is honest and about people being true to themselves. So the question for tonight really in my mind is, as Linden, as a faith community, with the people that we have in our community and the gifts and the talents that we have, what does it look like to be honest and be ourselves? Because the danger often with worship has been, I think, that you just copy a model from somewhere else. You see a church worship album you like from another church, and you try and replicate something that's going on somewhere else. I think it's good to be inspired by what other people are doing, and to use songs and poems, and imagery that other people have created. But I think the danger is you lose sight of who we are and being true to ourselves. So, oh yeah, I was going to show you this movie actually. I found this online earlier and I thought it was quite fun.
It has its own worship style, which is, well, some people are more expressive in worship, some people are more subtle. It's all good. I go to a church that's pretty expressive in worship. It's a hand-raising church. That's what it is. Anybody here go to a hand-raising church? So, who here does not go to a hand-raising church? Some of you are trying, you're like, I want them to need to get some momentum. Totally cool. But hey, if you're not used to going to hand-raising church, you want to go and join us, feel free to join us, but don't feel like you got to join right in. Okay? Start slow. We got a lot of different hand raises that we use. We actually have names for our hand raises. I'm going to walk you through real quick what they are, just to let you know. State of mind church, music is rocking. Start slow. Hands in the pockets, look double flat. So get warmed up, get your heart rate.
I reckon this is 60-70%.
Warm up, start with the first one. Ready? Carry the TV. Carry the TV. Got a big screen. Big screen, little wire. This one's like this is this big. This is this big. You're a liar. I'm out there. Jesus loves you. Thanks. This one's hold my baby. My baby. I'm doing light bulbs. That's the next one. Doing light bulbs. We got gold posts. Everybody knows gold posts. Heartburn. A lot of people like to do heartburn. Gold heartburn. We'll get to that. What's my favorite? Mufasa. Mufasa. The sun will rise. Tim, can you go higher? Because you take one hand and go a bunch of different stuff. Pointer, hatchet, schoolroom. Release the dogs, give the Lord a high five. Press it out. A lot of women like to wash the window. And when you're comfortable there, go for the big three. Village people, Rocky touchdown.
I thought that to inspire you. It is Sunday, after us gathering that perceptible change during Sunday worship. So a few questions for us to vote on using your little clicker. Does anybody not have a clicker? Yeah. Anna, could you, in that little black box there, our clickers, could you pass those to me again? So this first question, I'm asking the question, so what forms of worship would you like to see more of within the life of Linden Church? So Anna, what I want you to think about here, okay, is not just Sunday mornings, okay? So in the entire life of the church, which is basically all of us who are involved in the church, some way, shape or form, in all our lives, what forms of worship would you like to see more of? And you can vote for as many as you want.
Oh, really?
But can I suggest that if everybody just votes for all of them, we're going to have a rather dull response.
Why does it say response is one?
Because that's the number of clickers who have actually clicked. Okay.
Oh.
But you can vote for more than one. Okay. So there's liturgical. So that's the when we speak things formally. Often we put them up on the screen. We'll read things out. Reflective, meditative kind of stuff. But dandler sometimes. Dance.
So also
We can wrap up flag. We can wrap flag waving into that if that's one of your things.
Yeah, Rachel, you're right.
Mary's doing that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm asking another question specifically about Sunday mornings. Okay. I want this to just be a more general within the worship life of the
Do we have
church.
to do this now then?
Yeah,
I'm still thinking about it.
I mean,
Do we still have to, we have to vote now?
You have to vote now.
Right.
Well, you have to vote by the time I say your time is up,
Okay.
which will be in a few seconds now.
It's normally the most exciting part of the leash. Give you 5 seconds.
Yeah!
So each one, you can only vote for each one once, don't try pressing, dance, sleep. We're doing that.
That was you, man. That was you. We know your turn. You and your flags. Going twice, one for chant.
Okay, so just to stress, this isn't specific, there's only 19.
20 now.
Oh gosh, right. Oh, I took it.
So we're going to do this again in just a minute, specifically for Sunday morning. I think because we have to be a little bit more practical on a Sunday morning, about what we actually can.
I did this thinking about Sunday morning.
Oh, well, you didn't listen.
Mine hasn't.
So this is,
Generally in the life of
if you don't think yours registered, because it didn't increase when you pressed it,
Yeah.
just swap it.
You said
Maybe batteries.
in the way of the signal.
No, I think this is massive actually. You might have already pressed it.
I think I saw yours go up.
Yeah.
Did you?
I-
It was 20.
It's actually around the time I said I'm going to vote now, I definitely went.
Okay, okay.
That was me. Sure?
Okay, is everybody who wants to vote voted? Remember you can vote for more than one thing?
Wait.
It hasn't gone up. Anna's just voted. And it's still 21.
You vote for the first, you can
Maybe
add.
yours wasn't meant to be. Your opinion.
That means you got twice as much.
I don't think I did vote.
Okay. And it's
Oh, Chris Bidder wants to know the options.
Okay. Ooh, that's interesting, isn't it? So, the big front runner here is visual art.
Yeah.
Would anybody who voted for visual art like to share what they were thinking, what was in their mind on that one?
An active space where, if you're led by the Spirit, you can draw something, write something, paint something, chalk something, make something. So an active space that is available to you.
I also put visual art, sorry. During the first 3 events that we did last year, Nigel Mason blew my mind.
Yeah.
And I love the way that Nigel was able to get up and talk us through the art. And it's something which really inspired me and connected me with God, which music doesn't. So Nigel, now you're saying you're retired. You've got all time to do that kind of stuff.
You can take out a residency.
Exactly, yeah.
I was just going to say the same, that after going to the 3 events and having the visual arts, the different things, so it was Nigel's that stuck in my mind, but then the other ones that were there as well. From being somebody that wasn't really, probably before would have unknown, that's something that actually I found really helpful, and as Dan said, I did feel closer through that, so things like that.
Cool. Harriet.
I would say, when I went to do my most volunteering, I was working with Club One, that's kind of end 13 each. And I ran the art tent with other volunteers. And we covered the floor and some of the walls with paper, and we just wrote in the middle what's God saying to you. And they've not really had very good responses before. They had a lot of the children that perhaps don't really engage in the same way it kind of raw, inappropriate things, pieces of paper. But we found with that kind of, with that central point and that question more like that, just opened it out so much more. It's obviously quite generic and quite an obvious kind of question. But we found as a team that the young people that at the beginning of the week were not engaging and they were putting their energy into disrupting other people, that they actually went forward and put their input, and some of what they were saying was so beautiful and so, like, you just wouldn't think it would come from them because they just seem so away from that, but it comes back to education and learning, where some people would think different ways. I think that's
something that if we recognise more, it could be really beautiful.
Inappropriate drawings have always been my concern about going this way and
Chris Matthews.
so what were the order? So the second then most popular there was reflective, meditative, followed by, what was the next one? Liturgical, which we actually, for a church like ours, we do quite a lot of that, I would have said. What? Liturgical. Dance is down there. 3%, which probably is a couple of people, said other. There's an other on all of these questions. Would any of those people like to share what their other was? I'm sure there are. I mean, these were just the ideas that I
Actually, that's the wrong word.
wasn't just two people pressed the wrong button.
No, I did other. I always get really excited about food and find sometimes that can be a very worshipful experience. Yeah, cheese and wine night, amazing. But done in a way where you share food together and include in that God, if you see what I mean. Because this is not about Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Although we do have our food, don't we, after the service sometimes. So that's what sprang to my mind. I get so excited saying about food, and then I have a big downer after I've eaten. But for me, it's quite can be quite spiritual.
This is my dad too.
This is really bad.
Anyone else on the other? It's amazing that I'm surprised nobody said like just being out in nature. The number of people who say to me, do you know what, I hate worship in church, where I meet God is when I'm out in the mountains, on the beaches. And I've always, and given where we live, I've often wondered, as a church, are there things we could do more meaningfully as a church in terms of engaging with the beauty that surrounds us?
I guess one of the things when I pressed B, that's what I was thinking.
Okay.
From the meditative side.
Yeah.
Not just being in a church setting.
Yeah.
But elsewhere.
Yeah. Anyone else wanted to share? So we're going to do this again in a minute, specifically for what we do on a Sunday morning. Is there anything in the more general context? Because I'd like to encourage you to create space, and opportunity, and facilitate opportunities for us to do things outside. I don't want us to start thinking of worship as just what we do on a Sunday morning. So I want us to do more stuff as a church that we recognise as being part of our worship life. It doesn't happen on Sunday morning. It might happen on Worm's Head. So we might do church walks to Worm's Head as an act of worship. We might build something a little bit formal into that, just so we might stop and pray at some point or something, whatever it would be. But I want to think outside of Sunday morning.
Nigel, milk. What do you call them?
Yes. With you.
Yes.
I think for me, I see worship, in the workplace, just in how, I go about speaking to people, how I treat people, how I am, the value that I place on people, how they maybe feel after speaking to me. Might not always be a good experience, but, I'd like to think that there would be more positives than negatives, and so that for me, the workplace is a big part of life. And, just how I am with people, really.
Yeah.
That to me is worship.
Absolutely. Worship in the workplace. Important. Okay.
So we could all come in and check
Check in.
if we do for a weekend.
Yeah. Like,
For a weekend.
a secret shop or a secret.
Take yours.
So, just moving things on Sunday mornings, one of the things I love about Linden is that no two Sunday mornings look exactly alike. And I think that's a real blessing that we have being a part of Linden and having a church morning gathering like that. I would say on average, probably 25% to a third of what we do on a Sunday morning is singing. Is that a fair assumption? And I'm very aware the first thing I thought about when I said to Chris I would like to take on this role is, one of the things I'm going to be aware of is for the rest of my time doing this, I have some people saying to me we sing too much, and some people saying to me we don't sing enough. Because I know that is a common problem in terms of when Christians gather. Some people want to sing loads, some people say why do we sing all the time. So let's think specifically about a Sunday morning. And if you vote for these things, what I'd like us to then think about practically how we make this work. Okay? So kind of in general, there are lots of things that I'd like to encourage us as a church to more engage with, but specifically on a Sunday morning, what would you like to see more of? And if you vote for it, start thinking about practically how we might do them. So think they're the same options. Yeah. So cast your votes now. Again, you can vote for more than one. Are online people able to, if you are online, which I think might just be Chris, if you want to send in a message via, how can you send in a message?
He's speaking to me here.
Oh, okay. So if you want to send in a message to contribute, please do that. Anyone else before I close the poll? 3, 2, 1. Okay, so unsurprisingly, the visual art one was still strong. I think a lot of people probably were thinking about that in the context of the church meeting anyway. We've got more liturgical. Does anybody want to have voted for that? Want to share why liturgical worship is important?
The thing about a liturgy is that it's a way of participating outside, a way for everybody to participate in the act of worship, in the act of prayer, outside of joining together and singing. It's another way for everybody to join in and to be part of the same thing. There's a drama in it, almost a theatre in it, which I find really powerful.
What about reflective meditative? So in my mind, when I wrote that, I was thinking about the kind of things that sometimes we do when Dan leads the meeting, and we do those kind of lots of visual imagery and kind of being still and listening to music and watching videos. Quite a lot of you voted for that. Do you want to share one?
I link that with other. So
Okay.
with the, as I was talking about nature and being places, to have some visual imagery up and then nothing else. But we tend to do that for about 2 or 3 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
So by the time you're thinking about it, you've moved on. So I guess to have the opportunity to have more time to just focus on whatever. Like you said at the beginning, you think of a word and that brings you into worship.
Yeah.
So it could be just images of the cross, of an empty tomb, of nature itself, of the workplace. Just ways to actually help you focus for a prolonged period.
Imagine that coming into church. We're going to meditate on an image of the workplace. there's my desk. That's to do.
It's a great way to focus on prayers.
Yeah. So 2%. Okay, this is the one that always makes me nervous because I'm not a dancer, and I've been in church situations where this has been wonderful, and I've been in probably more than that percentage in church situations where it's been pretty painful. Dangerous. I grew up in Linden, and I got quite often sit down the front where the flag waved off the gather. A number of times I nearly had my eye out. Anybody want to share on the dance front? Because I think it definitely can be a valuable addition to a corporate kind of worship.
If it's done well,
Yeah.
isn't it, if you can actually dance. Some people think they can dance and they can, mime out whatever, but it's just like completely cringeworthy and it's just like, oh my god, it's just. And it does the opposite then, it doesn't really help you to
It
I think
distracts
age is
them,
really
yeah.
distracting. So I think it would help if, you know, you can.
Yeah, I mean,
If I didn't know about that, so can I challenge
Yeah.
that? Well, not challenge it, but, so I'm not a dancer either, I'm rubbish at dancing. But I think, like, listen to what people are saying, like, a bad song or a bad dance is not about us. So somebody that's dancing really badly, it's not about whether we think they look stupid, it's about their attitude and what they're doing for. And if they're worshipping God through it, then God enjoys it. You know, if somebody can't sing, but they enjoy worshipping through song, what's different about somebody that can't dance and knows to dance? God made us to dance, God made us the same, whether we can sing or dance or not, really shouldn't have anything to do with us. It's the attitude of the person.
I guess it depends. If you put on the dance as a performance for other
Yes,
people,
that's what I mean. If you like
Yeah.
got flags at your French or something, you know, I know that my kids would love to, you know, grab a flag and dance, and I think that's an expression of, you know, their children love to do it, and that's how God made them. You know, and as long as it's not in the way and like bashing people around, you know, again, if it's like a performance style thing, then it doesn't have to be.
I think that's what it's kind of, yeah, performance kind of thing, it's a little bit front.
Yeah.
Again, I think, but other things, as you say, yeah, because you express it, you would want to express.
absolutely, yeah.
And it's about what worship is, isn't it? We don't worship God for a wonderful feeling for ourselves. Worship is about coming towards to kiss. That's what it means, isn't it? Coming towards to kiss God. It's about giving Him the glory. It's not about what we can get for ourselves.
I also think that, I mean, I wonder when David danced naked, I may add, to the Lord, I wonder if he was a really good dancer.
Yeah.
Or whether there is something that I think comes upon you that is bigger than your body. And as British people, we're terribly reserved, aren't we? And, you know, putting your hand up is quite scary at times, and that's about as much exhibitionism that you can cope with. But I do think that that when you are filled with the Spirit, standing rigid is almost going against your natural being. And I hear what both of you saying, and I think there is that difference between performance as opposed to just expressing worshipfully your body movement. But I do think, I pressed on the other, which will kind of link, about seeing worship through the children. That's what I really would like to see. And children love to dance and they just love to move. And so having flags, whilst might be kitsch and twee and 80s and not to people's taste, but actually it fulfills a space for children to express themselves and engage in worship, because I think it's really important.
Yeah.
I want to second that. I think over and over again, I think that more importantly, whatever forms of worship there are, participation, us all joining together in it is probably more important than performance. Like, for example, I didn't vote for poetry, particularly, partly because we've got plenty of that, but partly because it's generally somebody standing up the front, and maybe that's a useful thing to share, and we have enough of it, and that's cool, we don't need any less of it or more of it, anything, but we need, I think, a lot of stuff where we all join in with it, we all take part. You know, we've got loads of singing, and that's why I didn't vote for singing, because we do lots of it, but that's great, because we take part in that. And other ways for us to take part, to join together, is probably the touchstone.
We carry it. Sorry, you can
That's
go back.
I was going to say that when we go to Soul Swiper, as a youth group, there's quite a lot of dancing in the big top. But it's usually after the hours of the normal meeting, when the normal people leave. And the weirdos who are touched by the spirit stay and hula around the place. And the first year that I thought it's really weird, but I think you definitely adjust to it. I think one of the things that we worry about as a church is scaring off new people and intimidating them in a way that spontaneous dancing can definitely be intimidating. But other things that I've seen in Soul Swiper, like there's a group I think they're called Relentless, but I'm not sure, I might just think that. They do like it's almost like a fusion of poetry and dance together. So there's like a story that they tell. They talk about spiritual journeys and stuff, and how I think there's one piece it's all about connection with God, and different people were on this train together, and it was their journeys and how they were all related in this connection to God. And that was actually really effective, because I think sometimes you think of dance through worship as only a spontaneous thing, like the only way we can worship can be spontaneous, but I think that planned worship is just as valid as spontaneous in the moment stuff, because I definitely think that God can plant something in your head that can linger and that can grow and can become an even better product of what it could be if it was just spontaneous as well.
Oh, there we are then. Poetry and dance next time.
You wish.
Just by you.
I mean, the reality is, when it comes to things like that, not everybody is going to engage with that. I think the beauty of sung worship is that it is something that the vast majority of people can engage with. And I think Howard made a good point. Actually, what's important sometimes is just the fact that as a community we do something together. Which is why I still love singing, even though musically I often find a lot from it. I just love the fact that as a church we come together and join our voices. I think that is really cool. We covered everything there.
There's one thing that in this whole singing business, coming from a Welsh perspective, it's very definitely part of my nature and part of character. And I wonder whether it's part of Welshness that harmonies and singing is. You can hear harmonies in Linden, whether you're singing in the band or not. So there's a natural gift in us that we can't put down and say we're doing too much singing, unless somebody really says we're doing too much singing. I
do hear that. Lots of people, I've heard people say we sing for too long in Linden.
But I didn't vote because.
And I heard people say that it's very. So one of the things that I really hope that we get out of tonight, as a church, is a sense that we recognise that actually different people are going to respond to different things, which is cool, and I think it's good we recognise that. And that is why I hope that in Linden we empower people, which means on a Sunday morning, what we do from Sunday to Sunday does look very different. There will be some Sundays, I hope, in the future where we do loads of singing. And there'll be some Sundays, I hope, where we don't sing anything. And I think we need to recognise why that is the case. Some Sundays have loads of poetry, and other Sundays will be none. It's because what we do on a Sunday is a reflection of who we are, and we're really diverse.
I'd just like to say something a bit about singing. I love singing. I think what I'd like to see is there's plenty sort of talented musicians from Linden. I think what tires me about sung worship is just the same songs and like typical cover bands of Matt Redman and whatever, which are great songs, but I think what's powerful sometimes in singing and worship is when it tells a story of the community that you're in. So I would love to see homegrown songs come out of Linden.
It's going to be a chance for you to vote on that.
Oh, okay.
But no, but keep saying that.
It brings the story of community, because I think that carries depth and root in a community that's quite powerful. So I'd love to see more of that come out in the sung worship, that it's indigenous and it tells a story of the community that we're in. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. No long influence in that sort. We're going to move on and have a little chat specifically about sung worship. I think sung worship will always be a fundamental part of what the church does. I think that's good. I think there are good reasons for that. Before we move on to specifically think about sung worship, is there anything anybody wants to add? Well, at the end, we'll chat again practically about how we might make some of this happen.
I didn't vote because I can't see how you can fit any more into Sunday morning.
Yeah.
it's chock-a-block, and it's almost like paying lip service to all sorts of things if we stick most into it.
Yeah. Okay, so while, which is a dilemma, isn't it?
Yeah.
So at the moment, we do things like, I don't know how often in theory you do your kind of reflective sections.
We haven't done one for about a year.
Irregularly, really.
I don't have a vote thing on this, but would it be good to see more of those, or do you think we got it about right? Or can't see us, we can't say.
I wouldn't get upset at all.
Well, it's been a long time since we've done.
Chris and I have got something concocted for this Sunday. It's not really one of those.
I like it being perfect because I think it's really powerful when it does happen.
Yes.
You get such an encouragement, like when we go to Long we always associate that last day with the session that we do, communion. And I think that's quite nice to have that a little bit of a different thing, because I think sometimes overdoing certain parts can lose the kind of core of it a bit.
Yeah.
So I quite like having it as a regular feature of Linden, just not like every week,
One of the things that I loved about coming to Linden, different from where I was going before, is the fact that you don't know what's going to happen. But it's not set. So it's not. What I read was that it's not that every full Sunday will be a reflective service. And that's good, because what happens then is you don't, for those who don't have reflective services, go, well, we just won't go every full Sunday. But it just adds variety, and it's. And the fact that it's not, like people say, it's not structured, and how they're smiling at me now.
Well, it means you can ambush people.
There's that. But it's not the him something, him something, him something, him, And that's so refreshing. Sometimes we do that, but a lot of times we don't. And sometimes we do those singing at the beginning, and then we don't do any more. Sometimes we do singing, and that's just so refreshing. When we all have such busy lives, to actually turn up on Sunday morning and not know what's going to happen, and for it to be, a bit exciting. What's going to happen Sunday morning?
And it stops you like falling into just routine, and you're just going through the motions. It keeps it fresh, and it keeps stirring something in you, rather than it just becoming, oh, I'm going to church on Sunday because it's Sunday, and that's I'm going to church because I'm going to worship, and I'm going to pray, and I'm going to meet with God. Like, there's a lot more into it then.
I wonder if sometimes we could sort of switch around, even if you have your sort of sung worship. I don't know how this would work with the kids, but sometimes I find it really useful if, say, you have the chat first, and out of that you have a response that leads into a time of music or response in that sense, rather than we do the singing, someone does the talk, and then it's teas and coffees.
Yeah, I've often wondered that, because we tend to avoid.
Because then there's
possibly,
I
think possibly to avoid falling into the kind of worship talk, worship sandwich that lots of churches are in. But yeah, you're right. I think, worship for me should always be a response. It should be a response to some revelation of who God is. And sometimes I think, oh, that talk is kind of blown my mind.
We're all my time of reflection or meditation after the
worship
talk.
now isn't a response rather than seeing coffee and chit chat.
Yeah.
What would be great in the new building, if we were to get if the building was to be expanded and we were able to do what we wanted to do with it, if there was a space people could go after you've spoken, so like a prayer room which is always set up, where people could get creative and respond to what has happened for the life of the church. So a space where they could paint, which would reflect a journey that the church is going on through, whoever's been speaking and what is going on through the life of the church. So there's a reason why.
Yeah, I've often wondered about whether it's practical. Whether it's practical to have different places that people can go to respond. I was in a church once where they used to do that with the sermons quite often. So they would have 2 or 3 people speaking on a Sunday. It wasn't a particularly big church, similar size to Linden. And based on a Sunday morning, they would say, this morning, these 3 people are going to be sharing, one is sharing about this, one sharing about that, and you would choose, which we were in a school, so it was very easy to respond to whichever classroom you wanted to. And I wanted to get
was going to say on Downfront, you know, with having the separate buildings and stuff. It kind of reminds me of when you do go to festivals and you have the separate venues that kind of, you know, everyone has a thing that fits them a bit better, or it's good to this one because that kind of fits in with it. And we have late night worship at Salside, and also like some of my friends' church who live far away, they do late night worship on Thursday, and that's just kind of an open worship session that is, you know, 2 hours of worship. And I think what we're blessed in Linden with is so many talented people with so many different forms of worship. And you know, there's a lot of people that want to do a bit more, I think. There's not the time, and I think with the separate building and with the separate room, there's that opportunity for people who don't do as much and who would like to, maybe a little bit less pressurised because it's not the main building, it's not the main place. So it might be a good place for people to kind of introduce themselves and to start doing worship in different ways, a little bit more experimental maybe. I think that would be interesting.
Do you think it would be nice though? Because it's nice, like a separate room, but I like people are missing out on seeing what people are doing when they go off. So it'd be nice if there was a section in the room so people could actually see. So it would serve the wider church.
I mean, one thing that I think could work very well, given what we've got, is a space somewhere in the room, more possibly in the annex, where art is going on that's being filmed and projected somewhere permanently throughout the morning evening. So we could, on one of the walls, we could project the artwork that's going on, even if it has to be for practical reasons in the annex or wherever. And then, at the end of the meeting, we can go and see what's going on. The danger I'm aware of doing this kind of liquid church model, where you basically all spin up and do whatever you want, is it can become quite consumerist. You basically go to whatever you want, you pick and choose what you want. Whereas I think there's great value in doing things as a church together, so we share those. But
one thing I've enjoyed when I've gone to some of these festivals is, and not first I've enjoyed the churches where they've done it, is we did it in 3, someone painting during a talk. So what is being said is inspiring the artist. I don't know if you did that when you were doing your thing. It was coming out of what was being said, or you just said something like that. But I know we've got artists. I spoke to Jenny. I know she's great with art and can do stuff. If during one of the talks someone could be painting or...
Yeah, that's what I meant about having a working space that people could go and do things as they're listening or worshiping, singing or whatever.
Yeah, I think on my hit list straight away for kind of things, just the obvious things that you could do to engage some of the people I know have gifted in art and building that into what we do or something. So, yeah.
I think one of the problems we do have is they need to be asked to do it, because a lot of the people generally aren't confident and need someone to come and say, actually, will you do this?
Well, in my mind, that's kind of part of my job is to say, right, I know you can do this. Do you want to do it on this day?
So you're doing it.
Can I just mention something? On the same worship store, like regular worship practices would be really helpful.
Yeah.
Especially, when you haven't got transport.
It's on the agenda.
There we are.
It is on the agenda. We'll talk. We've kind of touched on lots of things already. This will be a very quick poll. Because I knew sun worship was going to be one of the dominant things that we talk about tonight, and I think it will always be at the heart, particularly on Sunday morning, of what worship is. But I just wanted to get a feel for where people are at with it. So the question is, you can only vote for one, please. Do you feel like the sun worship really has too big a role on a Sunday morning, too small a role, or do you think we've got it about right? And I genuinely don't know. I'm glad that there's a nice big mix of people here, and it's not just the worship band that's doing that. And if it was just the worship band, I'd probably say too small. No, too big, sorry. Right. Okay, has everyone voted?
No.
Oh. Look at that, it was really nice, isn't it? So, people and people think too much is too little, but most people, maybe just as well, so for like, but we are anonymous, so we'll be honest. Well, that's encouraging.
a tricky one, because it depends. If we're trying to create room for other stuff coming in, then I think it's too big. If that's your section you've got before the speaker comes on,
Okay.
then is it too big if we want to foster something else, like a bit of poetry in there, or a bit of this and that?
So that's really interesting to learn. So for those people who felt like there's not enough, what would you, because you've got to be practical about this, what would you sacrifice in general on Sundays to have more time to sing?
Starting church on time? I didn't actually press that, I pressed C, but just getting there on time. That would kill another 15 minutes of time, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I agree.
Practically.
One of the things that I want to try and nail down when we're starting to think about it from practical into techie stuff, one of the issues we have is that setup, the system that we have as it stands, musically, takes a long time to set up and get sound check. The reality is a lot of the time you need in worship there, your practice gets squashed down to kind of 15 minutes. And you're still learning songs, getting songs on the overhead, just for practical reasons. The reality, there are already people there at 9 o'clock in the morning, setting stuff up. So one of the things I'm going to try and get in place is a slicker system for making that happen, so that we can, in principle, start at 10. I think the reality is with Linden, it's always going to be sold.
It's always going to be the worship band at 10.
But if people realise if they're not there at 10, it's already started.
Yeah.
It's true, actually. A church I used to go to that had a new minister arrive. At one point, he was like, "Okay, we're going to start at 10:30 when the people are there or not."
Yeah.
And after a while, everybody turns up at 10:25.
Yeah.
You know.
You were thinking of like the church as a whole. Like for us, we're all here because we've got maybe you text us and said this, to carry on. But, but because we're either part of the worship or in some way, shape or form we're involved. But myself, now thinking of other people in the church, like I find, visual things, help me to engage or having, they're reflective in the meditative times. And I press that I think that sometimes it's too big. I pressed A because, like for me, I would see it as trying to not like help other people in a patronising way to engage, but in the mix of things, having visual things or different, bringing the art and different stuff in, so that those things are like a vehicle and a pathway for people to engage, as opposed to just singing songs. Because if we're all engaged, well then to have that time of worship, amazing, fantastic, when we're all engaged together. But I think for lots of people, it really is hard to engage because you've got kids, or maybe you're not really used to worship, singing. So to be thinking of others as well, in the mix of things, and bringing that stuff in so that you're helping everybody to engage with this.
Totally up on You're right, it's a difficult, because I know people who time their arrival at church to try and coincide with worship finishing.
Yeah.
That's how much they some worship. Because they just don't engage with it, they find it tiring and stressful, and they try and arrive because they've learned that usually finishes around 11. So that's when they arrive.
Why is that? What's the reason for that?
Well, because that's not the type of worship that I think if we started with 30 minutes of liturgy, it's very few. It's not, it's few, because I think some worship generally is the form of worship that engages most people, but not everyone. We have to remember.
But do you think that, because looking around on Sunday from our point of view, a lot of people are just singing songs. They are just singing, they're not worshipping, they're singing songs. And I just, from a sung worship point of view, and someone who's really passionate about worship through music, how do we put across the fact that we're not here to sing a song,
we're here to worship God. You know, and some people may find that it's a, you know, they feel like they're being watched, or they can't sing, or it's just a really alien thing, or is it the fact that we just don't, it's like, this is going to sound wrong, but practice worship, we don't get together as a worship band, do we ever get together and just worship, rather than practice a song? You know, do we ever as a congregation, you know, it's that freedom, isn't it, to dance or to sing out. I haven't been at a service where people have sung out worship that isn't actually in music, and I don't feel, for me, there's that freedom to do it. And I think if you created a space maybe where you felt free to do that, then maybe it would encourage other people to do it and not feel so enclosed. Do you know what I mean?
Agree,
it's that freedom. So you look around, you know, I know we're laughing about raising their hands and all the rest of it, but you do when you're singing and you know, you're worshipping God, sometimes you look out and think,
I don't think, we got to be careful not to force people to try and get
no, I agree
into
with that. No, I agree with that, but there has
so
to
I
be
think
more
it's
than...
difficult.
I think part stimulating and, you know, relaxing and, you know, creative and, because it's very different from other strokes, isn't it, and helping people to engage and
I
to
think
have that.
one of the best things about being at Linden, and one of the most healing things for me personally, is that no one judges you if you don't sing. And to be honest, I've got to be honest, I find the music and singing wearying. Honestly, I actually voted about right. Because you look at that graph, and there's an equal number of people who think there's too much, and an equal number of people think there's too little, which means you probably got it about right, to be honest. But I personally, I just can't. It's, you know, sometimes I enjoy the songs, and sometimes I might even worship through the songs. But a lot of the time, I just find myself sitting down with my notebook, because it's the only way I can cope with it. But, so, you know, I know I can think exactly of one person who's a good friend of mine who does time their arrival, so they don't have to sing. I can't do that, obviously, because, you know, I've got family, and also Tracy really likes to sing. But the fact that you can actually sit down and not participate in singing, and no one judges you, everybody is cool with that, and that's great. And I love that that is there, and I love that it's there that people can really get into that singing. You see people, and sometimes I feel kind of jealous of the people who like are singing and just really pouring their souls into it, and genuinely worshiping through it. And that's a beautiful thing to see. And the fact that we have freedom to do this is one of the most fantastic things about the church.
I think the issue of freedom with worship that we were talking earlier, but what is worship and how do we worship? If I go to a really good concert, the only way Joy can tell if I'm enjoying it is if my big toe moves. I don't go, I don't pat, I don't sing along, I don't wave my arms, my big toe moves. And that's a fantastic concert.
Watching him playing his whistle.
Yeah.
His toes would say, the spirit is moving.
I think it's great that we told you about that we're in a church which is fantastic, that we're able to worship the way that we want to worship, not having to arms in the air, dance with flags, or paint something, make something. If we want to sit down, like the way that Howard described, he uses the opportunity when you're singing to take up his notebook. And his phrase was, that's the way I cope, but it's also a time where you know you've got your notebook and you can use it. So us singing creates that time for you. So I think the important thing with worship is we don't look and think, oh, they are just singing because they're looking flat. If you looked at me when I'm singing, you wouldn't think, oh, he's really there. Unless it's on my big toe. But I think the important thing is, I liked Howard's description of being in a church where we have the opportunity to worship the way that I worship, I'm not in the team of waving or dancing or clapping or tongues or whatever. It's an individual worship, and it must be really hard. You know, you come into the role of trying to organise worship where you're organising something which is going to suit a lot of people, but there's always going to be the fringes where it doesn't quite get there, but then we can use our notebooks at the same time.
I think the important thing that it needs to be authentic.
Yes.
And rather than manufactured or programmed, there needs to be authenticity in people's response. And sometimes you will be in a place where you begin in a place that I really don't feel like saying this, but you'll find yourself carried by it.
Yeah.
And there's a sort of a healing takes place, even if you're not participating.
Yeah.
And sometimes I deliberately don't sing because I need to be sung to, and that's fine. And I think there's a sort of there's something very mystical happens, which is deeper than the song and bigger than what's happening on the surface. There is something quite wonderful when people sing together.
But I think when we talk about authenticity, Andy's point is true that actually people would connect more if it felt like he was coming from a place of authenticity, that this song is reflective of the church, not just a song that we're singing. I know for me, I just find it, the Matt Redman dirge just, I know people, he's very good, he writes nice little tunes, but they're all very,
not patronising at all.
I find the worship can be quite the same, sort of hymn-like, or a little bit more upbeat. But like, is there different styles?
Okay, your
of
question has
worship?
just arrived on the screen.
Oh.
So this is the last opportunity for us to vote. I tried to, and it kind of has a try and
Drum and bass, isn't there?
try and group different
I believe that's
styles
Nah,
of musical worship.
Dubstep.
Now I would guess what we've currently got in Linden is predominantly A and C.
Yes.
Not much classical.
For me, the question is always why is that? Given the breadth of music within the church over the years, we've always settled for Matt Redman and yeah, you can do one.
What do you mean by Hillsong-esque?
Yeah.
Well, there is a lot of stuff has been inspired by the kind of Hillsong movement, isn't it? You know, you can usually tell a Hillsong song, can't you?
My Jesus, my Saviour.
In my
Cringe stuff.
I don't enjoy this.
I just don't know.
Has it yet? What's a classic Hillsong song for Jess?
The reason to hide.
They're often quite anthemic.
Yeah, it's very big.
Very big.
Where all sorts of other songs come from.
And a lot of HGV songs
More than
as well, aren't there?
Yes.
Yeah, I think
I quite dislike it, yeah.
Okay, if you want to vote now, we'll just see what people's responses were. Look at that, goodness me. So,
That was Andy.
partly unsurprisingly, seeing what's already been covered, and it is on my hit list, Andy, of things that I want us to explore. It's developing. So I know it's happened in the past within the
Yes.
we've used
That's the example.
songs written in-house.
You've written the CD.
Hillsong and more dance and.
And I know there are a lot of people who do write songs, so I think that is something that I want to make sure we explore.
I think going back as well to something that Kaz mentioned, I think it and someone else about rehearsals, that if the core teams would get together, because you mentioned about Sunday morning, there's no time, but if there was regular rehearsal slots, there are places that if you worship together, not just rehearsing a song, but worship together, something will come out of that, the life in that could then easily inspire songs and
So practically, in terms of the music, one of the things I'm going to resurrect pretty soon is a meeting time for musicians and singers. Just need people to come. The reality is, and prepare yourselves if you're new to Linden. I haven't been in Linden that long, but there seems to be a regular cycle of let's resurrect music practice. A lot of enthusiasm for a few months, quickly dies away.
Because people are involved in all sorts of other things.
Yeah, because
it's not just about the come and practice.
They're worshipping in other ways.
Yeah, because one thing is lifestyle.
But I want to make sure we don't neglect that. We give it an opportunity to work, and we don't say, well, that doesn't work for us, so we're not going to bother. And one thing we have tried in the past as well, because there's often people say we don't sing enough, so we put on specifically worship, evenings just of worship. And again, they tend to die pretty quickly.
I don't know since we've been.
No, but we have it with us. We've done Sunday evening.
We've done Sunday evening.
Yeah.
So in my mind, what I think might work, and we can talk about how frequently this would happen. In my mind, there's no reality that happen more than once. Like we could try to do it more than once a month, but I just don't think, being realistic, it would happen. Is that we will gather musicians together for a practice for a period of time, and then for the second half of the evening, we will just have a time of worship together that anybody is welcome to come to. So we have maybe an hour where we might, as musicians, learn some new songs and work on some arrangements, and then have the second half of the evening, which is an open evening of worship, and we'll see what happens with it. And I'd love it if things like that took off and people engage with it. We'll just see what happens.
It's difficult to get out.
Anything else? The obvious one here that I'm taking away from this is that we need to embrace and develop in-house stuff. Anything else? Well, there's quite a lot of other there, which isn't a surprise. What kind of things were people thinking about there?
I was thinking along the same sort of lines as Andy, and just free stuff. Just being able to. We've got such talented musicians that are not music band, but just to explore more of that. And I look a lot of canticle stuff as well, and because you've got
Nigel.
Nigel.
I was thinking of Nigel
Really
as
mad.
well.
Yeah, I know all that sort of stuff. Big exploring.
The minority thing as well. You've got more Welsh speakers in Linden than on the other hand. And children who are in Welsh speaking schools.
Yes.
So it's something that will progressively Linden will have to think about. No, but for the kids.
I agree. Choral was an interesting one. For me, musically, the type of Christian worship that most kind of inverts me is choral music. I'm envious of churches that have a rich tradition of choral singing, which we don't. But people have voted for it. I don't know if there is a practical way to try and. I don't have the skills, so I mean, if there were people who had the skills to develop that kind of choral singing stream within the church, I would love that and fully support it.
I wouldn't mind every now and again. But I went to a monastery near Gatwood when I was on that TV program. We did like chanting.
Taser. Was it Taser?
No, it wasn't. It was like some Catholic, and it was amazing. I'm not saying do that every week. We'll just come and chant. But I was surprised. It took me a little while to get into it, but there was something it did something to me which I wasn't quite expecting.
Every year I go to the Taser event at Linden, and it's mind-blowing. And every year I think, there's no reason why we couldn't do something similar to this.
I think it's because it's simple as well. So you have a simple tune that everybody can get. We've got simple words that everyone can remember, and then it becomes reflective and repetitive, doesn't it?
Yeah, your mind moves around these words.
Yeah. And so,
Okay, I promised people that we're not going to delay that. So I just wanted to leave us with these questions, really. that I don't think we're gonna tackle tonight. When it comes to confusions on, but these are things I'd love us to be thinking about. And if you have thoughts on these questions, to be communicating to me over the next few weeks, months, years. For me, I don't think there is an obvious answer. Well, there's an obvious answer, but I think there's some deeper answer to the question: why do we worship? And why do we do it? So yeah, that's out there. How do we engage more people? I think something. So really, that was what Kaz was talking about. Is that like I think there must be ways. A lot of people do maybe opt out, or so how do we engage more people in worship, and particularly children? And I think nice and simple, easy one is flags. I've heard so much about these flags. Actually, they're on the way.
But also sometimes songs, because you've occasionally
Yeah,
done
kids
kids songs,
Yeah, action songs.
which for adults as well is
Yeah.
great. People smile.
You did
yeah,
a kid song.
It's more than
What do people think about kids songs? Because I've gone on a because we went to and we're like, we must do a kids song every Sunday. It was almost like a religious thing. And what I noticed reading them a lot was the kids seemed completely disinterested.
Yes.
And the adults loved them, but the kids seemed completely disinterested. All kind of awkward.
I see.
Just think
I
about
see our-
Minecraft.
I see our children have gone on a bit of a journey over the last year, 18 months. I think initially, and even at the very beginning when we integrated the kids spot, kids didn't come to the front. They carried on playing at the back, or in that blooming car, whizzing up and down, or whatever it was, they didn't engage. And over the past 18 months, particularly the last sort of year, like last Sunday, when, forgive me, who said about, who did the kids spot?
Tim.
Tim. It was Tim. Like bringing people down, and all the children came, and that's kind of grown over the last sort of year. And I think there comes a responsibility, doesn't there, a little bit of parenting, and sort of our role as discipling our children, in that, come on, let's do it together, and that's what you do when you go to toddler groups, and that's forward play, or whatever it is. Children learn by example, and so there's a responsibility of parents, and I think that there's been much more of an engagement in that, and I think that if we tried more child-friendly songs, I think we'd have a better response to encourage.
Don't we ask the kids what they actually want?
They don't know what they
We don't know it.
I taught a new song upstairs.
Another song is what do they want to do in church?
You've been asking 6-year-old what they want to do, and it changes every 5 minutes. And also, from my own experience, you ask a 6 or 7-year-old what they want to do, and they don't want to do something, and then you start doing it, and they love it.
Yeah, that's right.
There's no way of knowing. It terrifies me.
Oh, it's been quite good. I'm going to heap some praise on my mother here, and I don't know how to do this. But I know that you've been teaching kids songs upstairs, which they know, and then you do that song in main church, and they feel that they can then, this is our song, which I think that's been good.
Yeah, I think
I did one last Sunday, which I want to use. No, what I wanted to use about building each other up, and I want to use it next time I do a little thing. So, but some of them were really engaged with it. Others were completely.
Bit like adults.
There were a little core of them who were really into it, actions and everything. And we want to do it downstairs. So,
I think what Andy was talking about in-house writing songs. I mean, we could have a kids group of writing songs because they would come up with some brilliant stuff, really honest stuff, and we've got enough talented people to create some good songs out of that, and then they would own that because they'd written it. They wouldn't necessarily have composed it, but they would have written it.
I think my biggest worry is that we become prescriptive. So if we're not willing to be prescribed to, how can we become prescriptive for the children? So we're expecting them to do something that we're not cool with, or that we don't want somebody to tell. I don't want somebody to tell me I have a whip flag, but yeah, we're quite happy to tell the children what they have to do to get involved in worship, whereas
Yeah.
individually, we've all said that it's me engaging in worship. So how, as a parent, no.
Do well in this time. Yes. Wait up, lad. The primary school teacher was this.
How, as a parent, do you actually worship with your children? Because it's got to start with me.
I think that because we're in handwritten and Matthews and New Wine, the thing that works so well with it is because you've got the strength of numbers, you have that movement to experiment and to see what the kids, when they have are given that option of the different things they want to do, whether it's circus or all those kind of things, you see where the kids go. But when we did songwriting in the mornings, because we have a morning session where it would be predominantly what the kids wanted to do, is what the kids fueled that, and they did what they wanted to do that morning. And we did a songwriting session with some of the young people. And obviously it's a bit older because it was 10 to 13 kind of age. But I think there's definitely something that we've picked up on as a church, is that there's honesty within children, and that really comes through in the things that they create and the things that they shape can help us to shape our own experiences. I think although sometimes we look and we think, oh, we don't want to put too much on the young people and we don't want them to feel like they have to do anything, and that's completely right, and I agree with that. But equally, we don't want to overlook young people, we don't want to overlook children. I think because they're that age, they can't produce anything of the same magnitude and strength as people of older age.
I have an online point.
We have an online point.
Coming from
We take these more seriously.
Yeah.
In-house point.
Coming from Mr. Bidder, Chris is saying that if we want to change people's expectations about worship and how we engage with God and church, then we should mix things up deliberately. So change maybe the seating plan so people don't go and just sit in the same old seats. That they come in a Sunday, actually, they can't sit down where they always sit and do things the way they've always done things, because actually things have changed. The seat's not there anymore. Thank you, Chris.
Cool. I don't want tonight to go on too long, because I know sometimes when you're having a meeting, you don't want to be in, or you get to probably don't want to be in it. The third one for me is a really interesting one that I want to spend a lot of time thinking about. Because the three things we say that we do as a church is that we worship God, we make disciples, and we communicate Jesus. And I don't think those are three separate things. I think they overlap and they're integrated. But I don't quite get yet how worship integrates with making disciples and communicating Jesus. I mean, I've got some ideas, but I think it's something that I would like to think about in communion with you guys. So if that's something of interest that you think about, chat to me about it. And ultimately what I want to say is, if there's stuff that you want to do and things that you feel like you can give, you're going to have to tell me for me to create a space for you to be able to do that. I'm not going to do stuff for you, but I will certainly, if people have ideas, I'll pitch ideas at the leaders and say what you think. Should we give this a whirl? We try and create that space for those things to happen. But please do let me know. You can do that tonight if you would like to. I've got some pieces of paper here where you can stick your name, contact details, and if there's anything you're like, I would love to do this at some point, or I feel like this is something at some point in the future I'd like to have a go at, just stick it in the comment box at the end. It might just be I want to continue singing in the band, or I want to start singing in the band, or whatever it is. You can let me know tonight, but certainly in the future, please do as well. So we will close there. I was planning on going to the pub.
We're going to the pub to worship the Lord.
So after we pack up in the cafe, we'll go to the pub, and this conversation may well continue there. Would anybody like to close in prayer?
Yeah, God, thank you for tonight, just the space to chat about worship. And God, you're such an amazing God, and we love to stir your heart. And I just pray for the life of Linden and when we get together to worship you, that we don't go through the motions, God. And I guess as we want to shake that up a bit, and we want to discern what's right, so that people engage with you, most importantly, God. So I just pray for all the thoughts tonight and all the ideas, and that would just continue to grow. That the ideas that you want to see sort of happen, that you would just pour your spirit on. But we thank you for tonight, we thank you for the space, and pray that this journey will continue and there will be fruit that comes from it. Amen.
Amen. Cheers, everyone. I'm really encouraged by how many people wanted to be part of the conversation. It just got me excited, so thank you for that. Please, if there's anything you want to just kind of share with me now, pop it on the forums, let's do them.
And a big thank you for you, Ben, for